All right, well, I'm Ryan Axtell with Axtell Expressions, and today I want to show you how to fix a broken mic mouth trigger. We're going to do a trigger replacement on this mic mouth. You can see it's broken from use here. And so we are going to be putting a new trigger in, and the parts that we'll need, we have a new axle. That is what the trigger rotates on. We have a new string that we're going to be attaching. The tools that we'll need are a razor blade or X-Acto knife, some needle nose pliers, some glue to fasten our knots. This is super glue, and you want to make sure you don't use something like Gorilla Glue that requires water for the bonding process. So this is super glue that doesn't need that. And then in case we need to re-glue the lips back onto any of the fabric, we have a contact adhesive that is solvent-based. Again, not water-based. You can find this at most hardware stores and also shoe repair shops. The kind of glue that's used to repair shoes works well for gluing latex to fabric. So first thing we're going to do on this repair is we're going to remove the mic top. This is glued onto the handle, again with super glue, so turns to the left, but you're going to have to break the glue. You can kind of work it both ways. Once the glue is broken, and it may take a couple turns, maybe stiff. Once you break the bond of the glue, you can rotate to the left to take the microphone head off the threads. All right, then the next step is going to be pulling out our mic mouth. You can see there's a handle that goes inside our microphone handle. Now from squeezing this, it could be a tight fit. If you can't physically pull it out by hand, like this, what you can do is take either needle nose pliers or a flat screwdriver, stick it through the base, and you can use that to push up, and that can sometimes break the friction in order to pull your mic mouth handle out. So now we'll put these pieces to the side. I'm going to show you how to change this broken trigger. You can see here that there is a little pin that runs through the sides right here. Now there might be enough of a little edge where you can just grab it with needle nose pliers and pull out. If it's a little too tight and you can't quite get a grip, you can use like a small finishing nail or this other axle right here to push one side of the pin. And I can push that, and you can see I can just pop it out like that. Now we're actually going to reuse our old pin because it's fine. I'm going to save that. Now I'm going to pull out our broken trigger. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut off our string. But before I do that, just to free up space, we recommend that the distance from the top of the trigger right here to the bottom of the lip when you put your new string on is 2 3/4 inches from the top of the trigger to the bottom of the lip. I just want to point that out before I cut the string, and then we'll look at that again when we tie it on. So you can see under the lip, the string goes through and it ties on to a little metal bar that's sort of the jaw line. And so it's punched through the latex there. So I'm going to just take my X-Acto knife. You can use scissors as well. I'm just going to cut our string there. And now we can just pull it out. Okay, so now our trigger is off. Let's go ahead and put our new trigger on. Okay. Here's the trigger here. I'm going to pop it in. The goal is going to be to line up our holes. Okay, so you can see there's a hole here. We're going to line it up with these two holes and put a pin through it. One note, this is moving great. If you find that your replacement trigger fits a little too snug and there's maybe a little too much friction, if it doesn't move fairly easily with your hands, you can always take a little bit of sandpaper and sand gently the sides that will be rubbing against the plastic, and usually just a little bit on each side will drop the friction just enough, but most likely it's going to work out of the gate. So I'm going to line this up as best as I can by sight, and then I'm going to take our little axle. I'm going to push it in. If it doesn't go through all the way, I'm going to put a little pressure on my hand. So right now it's hitting the side of the trigger. It's not lined up exact. So now I'm just going to kind of look in and see. All right, so there it went through. So all I did there is I pulled the trigger out so I could get a visual of where the pin was coming out of this side, and then I was able to line the hole up, and now we have our new trigger on its axle. It's moving great. So now the next step will be connecting our new string to the jaw. So the process for this will be tying it inside to the metal jaw, running it through the hole in the elastic down to our trigger. We're going to run it through the trigger. Then on the other side, you'll tie a knot, and that's what determines the length of your string. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flip the lips, okay? So I'm going to pop these up so that I can get access to, you can see where my old string used to be. You'll need to use probably some pliers and an X-Acto knife to cut your old string that was there. It wraps around this little metal loop here. You can see there's two bars that loop around. This is what we will be looping our string to tie it. So I already did this. I took my X-Acto blade and some pliers and I got rid of the old knot. So now I'm going to take my new string and I'm going to use my pliers here. And we're going to run it through almost got it. There you go. Okay, so you can see that I've looped it underneath the metal. Now we're going to do that again. So I'm going to come down and I'm going to move this string to the side. I'm just going to push our string again so it's looped around twice. So I'll push that through. Okay, so now my string has one complete loop around there, so we know it's nice and solid. So then the next step is going to be tying this off, okay? And so what I'm going to do here is kind of a variation of a fisherman's knot. You can do a couple different knots. You could do a square knot, but let me just show you a way that works for us. So I'm going to leave a little bit of gap, and I'm going to grab that with my finger. So I have the end, our short end and the long end, and then I'm just going to twist those 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to take the loose end and I'm going to pull it through that hole. And then I'm just going to push that knot we created towards our metal so that you can get a little close. Before I pull it tight, you can see I've taken our knot here and we've pushed it all the way up to the metal. So there's no slack anymore. It's right up against our metal that our string is looped around. Now I'm going to take both ends of string and pull them nice and tight. So again, I just did 4 loops around our main string and pushed it through. You could use any number of knots here, but this is one that works well so we know the string's not going to slip. So you can see here's our new knot tied right around that jawline right there. Okay? Then to seal it off, you can take your super glue and then just put a dot right on the knot, okay? Just right there. You can put a dot on just to make sure that that string is not going to come undone. So you can give that a second or two to dry. Then the next step is going to be pushing. Oh, and then also you can cut off any excess string on the other side. You can trim that off if it's too long. Now we need to take our other end of string and we need to push it through this hole in the lip right there. So let me show you how to do that. So here's the hole we're going to be pushing our string through, but we'll be doing it from the other side. So I'm going to flip our lip over. So here's my string that's going to need to go through, and I'm going to use this little piece of metal to Poke it. See if I got it. Oh, slipped out. Try that again. There we go. So you can see we poked our string through. We can make sure our lip is up. So we got our new string coming through the mouth there. Now the next step, take our string. You can make sure the strands aren't loose. Make sure they're nice and compact. And we're just going to thread it right through our trigger. Oops. Okay, so here's our new string. Now the last step is we need to tie the knot off where we like it. And let me get my measuring tape here, just a second. So a great place to tie off your string length is with a string that's approximately 2 3/4 inches from the tip of the mouth to the top of our measuring tape. So you can see right about there. Ends up being about 3/4 of an inch below this metal bar. That's a great place to knot your string. You could do it slightly higher, slightly lower, but that's generally how we ship it out from Axtel. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to mark that with my finger there. And we're going to tie just a couple of knots to keep the string from slipping through. And this first one, I'm going to keep kind of loose because I want to see where our string lands. So I'm keeping it kind of loose to see, okay, that's a good spot. You see I'm about 3/4 of an inch, like I was saying, below metal bar just for our so I'm just going to go ahead and tighten that. So there's our first knot, and you can see we got good movement there. So the next step that you can do is tie a few more knots around this just to thicken it up so it's not going to pull through the bottom of your trigger. I'm just looping them on top of each other so we have a larger knot there. You can see a larger knot that's not going to pull through our hole there. So that's feeling real good. Got good movement on that. So then the last step would be to take your razor blade. You could cut off the excess string below that knot, and then you can also take a little bit of your super glue and put a couple drops right on your knot just to hold it to make sure it's not going to unravel. To reattach the mic handle, I'm going to slide it on. I'm going to make sure that the trigger lines up nice and evenly between our trigger slot so it's not rubbing on the left or right side. Just line that up there. So I've got good movement on my trigger there. Then what we're going to do is take our super glue. We're just going to put a few dots along the threads inside on our microphone cap, and then we're going to screw it on. So put a few dots here. Kind of rotate that around on the threads, and then that cap goes back on. I'm just going to screw that back down so it's nice and flush with the bottom of the threads. That glue will dry. It's going to keep your microphone cap back on. Cut your string there, and you are good to go.